Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. Recently I've been messing around with the Withered training scenario that you do in Suramar. This is a scenario where you take a bunch of Withered Nightborn and you go through some ruins to grab chests and such. So in this video, I thought I'd make a full guide on how all of this works to help you clear it as efficiently as possible. To start off, I sort of want to give a very basic rundown of how to start it and what the rewards are, so if you're just looking for tips on how to go through the actual scenario, feel free to skip ahead. To be able to start it, you do have to do some questing in Suramar. You unlock it by completing the quest entitled Withered Army Training, and after you do so, from there on out, it'll pop out as a world quest once every 3 days. And to engage it as a world quest, just talk to Archmage Thelrissa. She'll give you several choices on how much mana to spend, with the lowest being 400 and the highest being 2000, each giving you 8 and 20 Withered respectively. So obviously the more mana you spend, the more successful you'll be. If you don't have your mana capped to 2000 yet, you will have to do some questing and some treasure hunting. In the description, I'll have links to all of the mana cap increasing items to help you track them down. So once you spend your mana and start the scenario, you'll find yourself right outside the instance version of Falinar, which is the giant spider-filled pit. There are a few conditions for ending the scenario, and that's either when you die, all of your Withered die, or you reach the end or return to the entrance and request it to be over. You'll be going through many different rooms with different types of enemies. These enemies will be guarding different sized chests. First you have the smaller normal chests that you just open up and loot. These respawn each time you enter the scenario, and they typically contain around 10 gold, some ancient mana, and also sometimes the blood of Sargeras. You also have the medium-sized chests. These only spawn once per character, and they contain items that buff your Withered, such as giving them 25% more health, damage, and so on. I'll have a full list to the rewards in the description. The only hitch is, to get these you do need to sacrifice some Withered. Each of these chests costs 5 Withered to pick up, so they come at a cost. And we also have the Glimmering Treasure chests. These are the largest ones. They contain the highest quality items, but they also cost a whopping 10 Withered to send back. In these chests you'll find items that give you special Withered. You have the Berserking Helms, which convert a couple of your Withered into beefy tanks. You have the Spell Masks, which convert your Withered into AoE spellcasters. The Lenses of Spellseer Delion, which allow you to see hidden spectral chests spread throughout the area. And the Disc of the Starcaller, which gives you another caster. Currently it seems like these items do have a fixed location. They'll be in the same chests for everyone. In the description I'll have a map that shows the locations of each of these in case you want to pick up specific ones. Keep in mind that some of them are spectral and require you to have those lenses to be able to see. The ones I personally recommend are the Berserking Helms, because there's a door that requires you to have both of them before you can unlock it. And of course the lenses, so you can pick up the hidden chests. And lastly, we do have one more chest, and that's the end of the scenario chest that you always get. The contents of this chest will vary depending on your score. As you're going through the scenario, you may notice a score at the top of your screen. You increase this by killing enemies, and the chest will contain loot appropriate to how well you performed. It does max out at 400, so for the purposes of just this chest, there's no point in going past that. As for the actual contents, there's a variety of things. At a score of 400, you'll generally get around 700 gold, reputation tokens totaling around the 400 range, some ancient mana, eye level 810 plus gear, order resources, artifact power, and Bloods of Sargeras. Some of the more rare drops are rare toys, a quest starter that eventually awards you with the Fox Mount, and even hidden artifact appearances for certain specs. This will also eventually be the main reason to do this scenario, because like I mentioned earlier, those medium and large chests don't respawn. So once you get those, this main chest will be the only thing you really care about. So onto the meat of this guide, and that's the actual run. Before you start, I do recommend picking up some buffs. There are 3 buffs that you can get from your allies in Shalaran by feeding them ancient mana, and that's the Ward of the First Anarchist from Thelrissa. This gives you a free life and some extra damage when you otherwise would have died. You can also get Leyline Mastery from Arcanist Valtroy. This gives you a chance to spawn a leyline when you attack, and it gives you ancient mana when you stand in it, and it deals damage to enemies who stand in it. And you also have Warp Walking from Oculeth. This gives you a 50% movement speed increase whenever you get a kill. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can also pick up an Alchemist Flask. So while you're in this scenario, an important mechanic is the state of your Withered. Upon starting, you should get a big button on your screen that toggles your Withered between Mayhem and Follow. Follow mode is the safest setting. This causes your Withered to follow you, and they'll also attack your target. Mayhem mode increases their damage by 75%, but it also makes them attack targets at random. And it also causes them to flee more. Throughout your run, some of your Withered will occasionally flee in terror, and if you don't catch them within 10 seconds, you lose them. It can be a pretty troublesome mechanic, especially when you're focusing on interrupts and such, and it gets even worse when they're in Mayhem mode. Although they do more damage, they tend to flee more often, so it's something you want to save until you absolutely need it. Keep in mind that Thelrissa will alert you when they're fleeing, so pay extra attention to that and save any speed boost for when it happens. My general strategy, and what I found works best for me, is to save Mayhem for the Wraiths and the boss fights. And this is partially because I'm a Death Knight, which is a very slow class at the moment, so I sometimes have trouble catching them before they flee. If you're a faster class, you may be able to get away with a more liberal use of Mayhem. As for other things to watch out for, there are quite a few enemies and bosses that'll give you a lot of trouble, so I'll give you a brief rundown of noteworthy targets. Your first roadblock will be the volatile wraiths. There are a bunch of these down here, both static spawns and patrols. These guys have two abilities that you need to worry about: Arcane Munition and Volatile Explosion. Arcane Munition is a 2.5 second cast spell that throws an AoE arcane orb near a target's location. You're always going to want to interrupt this somehow because it'll deal a ton of damage to your Withered. So interrupt, stuns, knockbacks, the more skills you have to stop them from casting this, the better. If that fails and it looks like he's going to get a cast off anyways, the best you can do is get away from your Withered if you're the target because it's based off of your position. If you can, try to save your stuns because you'll need them for Volatile Explosion. It'll cast this once it reaches 20% health, and as you would expect, it deals some huge AoE damage. You can't interrupt it by normal means, so if you can, this is when you want to use your stun, use your cooldowns, and make sure you have your Withered in Mayhem mode to burn it down as fast as possible. And you can also interrupt it with pulling or knockback effects. On this note though, stuns in general are going to be very helpful for this whole scenario. Even the bosses are susceptible to them, so if you can pick any of them up via the talent tree, I do highly recommend doing that. The next enemy of interest is Lapilia. You can find her right behind the first door if you take a left at the first intersection, as you can see from this map. The main spell you gotta watch out for is Crystalline Shrapnel. This puts a debuff on you that causes you to deal some heavy damage to everyone around you after 4 seconds, and you can't use interrupts on it. As a ranged, you can avoid this by staying near a pillar and just line of sighting everything, but if you're a melee, the best you can do is stun her, or if you can't, just run away from your Withered when it's about to trigger. This is also a fight I'd advise using Mayhem on. Just keep in mind of that Crystalline Shrapnel whenever you're chasing your Withered and save your speed boost for when you're in a sticky situation. She is one of the toughest out of all of the bosses here, but she is guarding a glimmering chest. Once you take her out though, progress forward and you should enter a large room with a bunch of spiders and volatile wraiths. This room just requires careful pulling. If you can get away with using follow mode on your Withered, I would suggest doing that because if you put them in Mayhem mode, they typically pull extra mobs and you definitely don't want more than one wraith attacking you. Just remember to interrupt, save your stun for that last 20%, and be careful with your pulling and you should be good. Down the stairs lies a bunch of normal spiders and a couple of shard maidens. They're not really a big issue and they're worth clearing out for some easy points. And there's also a 5er chest down there. Remember, I do have some maps that shows the location of all of these chests, so definitely pull that up when you're running this. Also, remember to hold on to your Withered until you're done with the run. The only time you want to pick up a chest is if you've cleared everything already or you feel like you won't survive the next pull. The next boss on our list is Laystalker Drow. This guy will be a major roadblock to a lot of people. He's a stealth boss that patrols around, so it can vary where you actually aggro him. Typically the earliest I've seen him is in the hallway right after the room you just cleared, and at the latest in the main central hub area of the zone. So when you're clearing everything and waiting for him to show up, just be mindful not to pull too much because you don't want him to get the drop on you. When he is about to aggro, Thalrissa will warn you. And the basic strategy for this is just to zerg him down. As soon as you see him, pop Mayhem mode, DPS cooldowns, basically anything you have because you want to burn him down as fast as possible. The main worry with him is that he'll occasionally do a series of charges on your Withered. This is when you want to save your stuns because this will whittle down your army. Be extra mindful of your health as well because he hits very hard. Even as a Death Knight, I can't tank him for the full fight. When my health starts getting low, I do have to start cutting him and let my Withered chip away at him, so any cutting talents you may have will definitely be handy as well. It's also worth noting that at this point you may start seeing a bunch of cocoons in the area. Make sure you kill these because they have a chance to contain Withered troops that you can add to your army. And you'll also see ones just standing around, so make sure you grab them when you see them. Next up we have Brood Guardian Fix in this eastern hallway. This guy's not too bad. The main worry with him is his cleaving claws. These do a shadow cleave on his target, so make sure you face him away from your Withered. You can also interrupt it, so this is the first easy boss I'd say. Next we have the Volatile Wraith Lord in the southeastern circular room. This guy's just a super version of the wraiths you've been fighting, so the same strategy applies. Interrupt his arcane munition and save your stun for the last 20% for when he's about to explode. It's also a good idea to pop Mayhem. Just be mindful of his munition when you're off chasing a Withered. Note that there is an elite enemy near him. This is a patrol, so make sure you just wait and pull him separately. There's also a giant central area. I do recommend clearing it out because there are a bunch of chests and Withered to add to your collection. Check out those maps in the description for full details, but one room I do want to point out is the one hidden behind a door in this northwestern area. This has always contained 3 Withered for me, and it'll have a 10-man chest as well. Anyways, the next boss on our list is the Falderai Devourer. You can find him in the southwestern room in a room filled with eggs. There's no secret strategy to this other than going slow. These eggs do spawn spiders, so you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. So just take it slow and steady, and once you take them out, the door across from you should unlock. This leads to our next boss, Firog the Elfbreaker. This is the second to last boss, and he can be pretty tough not only for his mechanics, but also due to the fact that he'll have a never-ending wave of spiderlings assisting him. In his room is the start of a gauntlet where you have to push forward through these spiderlings, and dealing with that along with the actual boss can be quite tricky. The main ability you have to worry about is his stomp. This does a large amount of AoE damage to all enemies near him, and you can only interrupt it through stuns, pulling, or knockback effects. It does have a 2-second cast time though, so it's not the fastest ability in the world. He does also have an ability called Grab Withered where he'll squeeze the life out of one of your Withered. This one is pretty unavoidable if you're saving your stuns for the stomp, so the best way to really deal with it is to kill him before he has a chance to do it. People have also found success by pulling him into the hallway you came from so you don't have to deal with the spiderlings. Personally, I think this brings more danger than good though because your Withered aren't the best at following orders and you'll just drag them on top of them most of the time. You can try it if you want, but my strategy and what seemed to work the best for me is just to Zerg it, throw your Withered on Mayhem, and save your stuns or position altering effects for the stomp. But directly up ahead, up a couple of flights of stairs, lies the final boss of this scenario, and that's a giant spider named Silik. This is the source of those never-ending spiderlings you've been dealing with, so you want to get to her as soon as possible. I go to her immediately after taking down Farag, even skipping any Withered waiting to be recruited. So just make your way up the stairs trying to aggro the spiders before they reach your Withered. Just make sure you watch your health because you don't want to be too low for the actual boss fight. Speaking of which, the actual fight isn't too bad. The only ability of note is Web Blast, which sprays some webs around you, and if you stand in them, they do some nature damage and slow your movement speed. Other than that though, it's just a tank and spank. You'll still have to deal with the spiderlings until she's actually dead, so just try to grab those before they reach your Withered army. Also make sure to keep your Withered in Mayhem mode just like every other boss fight. Take her down and that scenario completed. You should have another 5er chest with Oculith waiting to send you back. From here you want to do your backtracking and picking up the chest that you want to pick up. Once again, there's no time limit, so take as long as you want, making sure to pick up any Withered you may have left behind in Firog's room. There is also one last room near the beginning. It's to the right at the first fork in the road, and you can only unlock it once you have 2 Berserkers. In this room there are a bunch of those volatile wraiths. You can pull the ones off to the side individually, but not the 3 in the center, so it's a pretty tough room. Just do your best to pull what you can solo, preferably keeping your Withered on follow mode, and then when you aggro the 3 in the center, throw them in Mayhem mode and pop everything you have. Other than that though, the best way to avoid damaging your Withered is by staying away from them because you won't be able to interrupt all 3 of them casting arcane munition. The main thing you want to worry about is a suicide explosion at 20%, so try to save your stuns and such for those. But that's pretty much all there is to it. The scenario will end when you run out of Withered, or you head back to Oculith and request it to be over. From there you can open up all of the chests you collected. So good luck with your scenario, and just remember that it does take some practice, and with some of the items you pick up it'll make future runs easier. So don't give up, try your best, and most importantly, just have fun with it. I hope you found this video helpful. Give it a like if you liked it, and if you really liked it, let me know in the comments and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, good luck, and peace.